Have you ever imagined that the person you love most would keep secrets from you? My name is Tom. 7 years ago, I was engaged to Becca. We had just gotten engaged when she started talking about wanting to live in her old village in the Irish countryside. I told her that this was a decision that needed to be thought about calmly and that we needed to talk about it, as it was not something easy for me. She was upset by all this talk. When I got a vacation at the company, I decided to invite her to visit her old village. She was excited about the idea, but asked only one thing, that I not take my cell phone, as she wanted to have a special moment with me without calls disturbing our atmosphere. I thought this was really cool and decided to travel without my cell phone. I was really in love and wanted to make the most of that trip with her. We arrived at the bus station, where she said her family would pick us up. I had never met her family and had no idea what they were like. The reason? She said they hated communication through devices and refused to travel to other places. I was anxious as it was the first time I would meet my fiancé's parents. A car arrived with her family members, but there was someone in the back seat. I asked who it was and she said it was a cousin. Inside the car, I greeted everyone. They were very communicative, even more than I expected, but something left me with a bad feeling. The village was very isolated, but he was willing to please her. However, this bad feeling persisted. When we finally arrived at the village and I got out of the car, I noticed that the few people who lived there were looking at me strangely. I asked Becca why they were looking at me like that, and she replied that it was normal, that I shouldn't worry, because people from the countryside are like that. Her father showed us a cabin and said we could stay there as no one was using it. In the evening we had dinner with her family. Around 8 p.m., the village was silent, as if everyone was already asleep, and there were no lights, just darkness. Her father gave us a lantern so we could go back to the cabin. I asked Becca if that was normal and if it wasn't dangerous, since everything was dark. She told me that it had always been like this and that there was nothing to worry about. Once in the cabin, I tried to make love to her, but, for some reason, she was distant and said she didn't want to do that there. I respected her wishes. We went to sleep, although I wasn't used to sleeping so early. There was nothing to do in that cabin or that place. I don't know how long I couldn't sleep, but I heard some noises around the cabin. I tried to pay attention, thinking it could be an animal or person. The noises stopped and I finally fell asleep. When I woke up, Becca was already ready and told me to change as we were going to her uncle's house. Before we left, I commented on the noises I heard during the night. She said it was all in my head. I found it strange that she insinuated this at the beginning of the conversation. I ignored her and went to kiss her, but she pulled away, saying we were late. I asked if everything was okay and she said yes. So, we went to her uncle's house, where we were received very well. When I went to the bathroom, I could hear a conversation between Becca and him. Becca said the special day was coming. I didn't know anything about it. When we got back to the cabin, I asked her about this special day. She changed her expression and asked me how I knew that and what else I knew. I explained that I had overheard the conversation while I was in the bathroom. She said it was nothing, just one day, and went to sleep. At that moment, I realized that Becca didn't look like my fiancée anymore. She was getting colder and moving away from me. There was something strange going on, I was sure. Even when we fought at home, she never moved away from me like that. Why was she now acting so differently? I decided to talk to her about it, but Becca said she wanted to sleep and wouldn't talk as everything was fine and there was nothing to discuss. That was the trigger for me. She said she would ask her father to take me to the bus station the next day, as I couldn't stand the situation any longer. She didn't say anything, and we went to sleep without talking to each other. The next day, when I woke up, I realized that Becca was not in the cabin. I went to her parents' house and, to my surprise, she was there. I went to talk to my father-in-law, asking for a ride, since there were no buses or taxis in the area and I didn't have a cell phone. He said the car was broken and that I would have to wait 2 more days. I was nervous, but I remained calm and asked to borrow a phone to call a taxi, as there was no bus or taxi stop in the village. They said the phones were defective and there was no way. I asked how I could get out of there and he laughed, saying that I just had to wait a few days and he would take me away. I went back to the cabin, saying I needed a shower, and called Becca, but she just ignored me. I already knew something very strange was happening. Inside, I was completely scared and didn't know what to do. Did Becca ask me not to take my cell phone for that exact reason? So that I would be left with no alternative to leaving and unable to speak to anyone? That's all I could think about. I made the craziest decision of my life. I just grabbed my wallet and ran into the forest, without anyone seeing me. When I was far from the village, I heard someone shouting that I was running away, but I didn't look back, I kept running. I saw a road, but it was risky. I hid in the forest, but kept an eye on the road, hoping someone would pass by. It was then that I saw Becca's father's car passing by, and at that moment I knew for sure that I was in danger. I stayed hidden for a while longer until I saw him returning. I waited a little longer and started walking through the forest, but always on the side of the road. I walked for a few hours, I imagine, until I saw a bus. I shouted and the driver could see me, letting me in. He asked what had happened, as I looked very scared. I told him the whole story and he said it was better for me to leave. Luckily, that bus was passing by the bus station. I managed to get home after that and threw away everything that belonged to Becca. When I finally looked at my cell phone, there was a message from her cursing me and saying that I had attacked her, that her entire family was a witness and that I had run away because of it. All I could think was that Becca and her family were completely crazy. After that, I changed my number and moved house. I never heard from Becca again.